All right, welcome back, everybody. Here for a very, very special edition of this podcast. Today we're going to be talking a lot about savings and banks and investments and all sorts of groovy stuff. So, of course, you know me. I'm Kevin, and today I'm sitting down with Mr. Chris, Dr. Chris Biolsi from here at Western, fellow macro professor, really great, knowledgeable guy, and I'm also sitting down with...
It's really nice of you to say.
Yeah. I gotta talk you up. And I'm also sitting down with Thomas again, and we're gonna talk a little bit about banks and savings. So I think the best place to start, and this is chapter 13 in ManQ for those of you who need it. The best place to start is just with like what a bank is, like the concept of a bank. Obviously they're all over the place, and they should be for good reason. All a bank does is act as like a financial intermediary. It's stepping in between people who have money and want to save it and get some return on it, and people who need money for their investment or for their home, their mortgage, like all the different types of loans that people need. Banks.
If you think about it, right, this is how I like to think about banks, right? Suppose you need to borrow. You want to borrow to buy a house, for example, and you need like $200,000 or $300,000. You don't have $300,000. You need to borrow it from somebody. The problem is you don't know who around you has $300,000 to lend to you. You could ask every person you know, every friend you have, every family member you have, people walking down the street, do you have $300,000 that you can lend me? All right? But that's time consuming. It's a pain in the ass. It's not the most efficient way to go about it. The bank knows who has money because people deposit their savings in the bank. Okay? And so the bank can say, look, we have the money because people have been depositing it in here, so we can offer you this loan. Similarly, if you're someone who's saving, you're trying to save up for a house, for example, in the meantime, you want to make sure your money gets a return. Okay? You could lend it to, like if I had savings and you wanted to buy a house, I could lend it directly to you. But it would depend on me knowing that you were looking to borrow and that you were a trustworthy borrower. Right? I don't know that. The bank knows that. So the bank actually helps coordinate all of this activity. Okay? It can match my savings to your borrowing needs without me and you ever meeting each other, without me and you knowing anything about each other, without me and you having to do any searching or looking around, asking, any of that stuff. The bank does all of that for us. That's like the primary reason that banks exist.
Yeah, they eat up all those transaction costs.
Yeah.
That's a good econ term for you. All that time and money and energy that you'd be wasting trying to find somebody to give you your home loan or something. I think it's also important, like in that analogy of like you looking for $300,000. Like most people don't have that just sitting around to lend you.
No, they don't.
But when you aggregate them, you add all those people's money together. They absolutely do have enough money to lend you, and they want to. They just don't know that they want to.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. So, like, I could get $10,000 from Thomas. I can get $10,000 from you. I can get $10,000 from, your landlord, right? Or I can just go to the bank, and the bank has already aggregated everyone's savings for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're describing here is like a basically just a market. Like a market for loanable funds, if you will, a market for loans.
Yeah, it's a market that connects my savings needs to your borrowing needs, right? And because there's loans involved, we call it a market for loanable funds.
Right, absolutely. So like, and just like any other market we've talked about in class so far, it's got supply and demand, right? So your supply is going to be like the savers, right?
That's right.
The people that are putting their money away, they've got their nest egg they want to get some return on, and then the demand side of the equation is the people who are looking to invest. They're looking to take out home loans and all the different types of loans. So that's kind of how how you can visualize it, just like a normal supply and demand model. The only kind of weird thing is we traditionally think of price as becoming like the interest rate in this model, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are the kind of critical details of your market for, or your model for your market of loanable funds.
Yeah, I mean, basically in normal market, right, you've got supply curve, demand curve, you've got the price, and you've got the quantity, right? In this market, the supply curve becomes savings, the demand curve becomes investment, the price becomes the real interest rate, and the quantity is just the quantity of loanable funds. So that you could just basically, like, all the mechanics are exactly the same. You're just substituting terms there.
Right.
Yep. I don't have much to add, so I think you guys did well. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I think banks really are like miraculous, though. Like in to some extent, like we're talking about minimizing transaction costs, making it to where people don't have to search all across the world to get a loan. Well, that's great today, and picturing how connected this world is, and how you could eventually just make an app to connect loans to people, and that could replace a lot of banks. But if you go back, mentally go back 1,000 years, like the role of a lender or a bank is like crucial to getting,
Oh yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of evidence, right, that the reason the United States has become so rich, especially richer relative to other countries that were colonized at the time, is our banking system evolved first. And because our banking system evolved first, we were able to become richer than other similar colonial countries like Canada and Australia and places like that.
Do you mind to flesh that out for me a little bit? That's very interesting. So you're saying our banking system evolved?
Well, I mean, it goes. There's a lot of detail, and I'm not 100% sharp on all the detail, but one of the main contributions of Alexander Hamilton was to modernize our financial system. He really put a lot of effort in the 1790s into making sure our financial system was state of the art. Okay, and there was not an Alexander Hamilton in a lot of other colonized countries or countries recently coming out of colonization or something like that. And a lot of scholars have attributed the United States' fast growth in its early decades to Hamilton modernizing the financial system, allowing saving and investment to grow at the rate they did at that time. So, I mean, Hamilton, in some ways, is one of the most important and overlooked founding fathers, because without Hamilton, it's possible the country is not as rich as it is today.
Man, is that why they wrote the musical about him, you think?
I think he's the most deserving of a musical, yeah.
I like it. Most deserving of a musical. You know who else got a musical from that time period? Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. That's actually the name of the musical.
I think that is appropriate.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah, Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. That's there's a lot of musicals out there that you've never heard of. Me too. And
is that one?
Yeah, that's definitely one I hadn't heard of until I had, and then I was like, whoa. But
that's fun because Jackson was the one who took the charter away from the Second Bank of the United States, which was the successor to Hamilton's greatest achievement. So Jackson and Hamilton, had they known each other, I don't think they did. They would have hated each other.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Very much on opposite ends of the a lot of political conversations, but I also just don't think they would have got along.
No, almost certainly not.
Yeah. But kind of hopping back to banks, I do find that discussion interesting, though. So, big point. You're just like any market. Your supply should equal your demand when you come to your equilibrium. So your savings should always be equal to your investment. Is that right? That's like
in equilibrium.
In equilibrium,
mm-hmm.
Right? So that's a big assumption of this model, right?
That's a prediction of the model.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, basically, what it's saying is that every dollar you save is being invested by somebody else in equilibrium. That's kind of amazing. Like, every dollar that you save, someone else is using to invest in a new business or to buy a house or to expand an existing business or something like that. And the flip side is every time you see a new business open, okay, which presumably is financed by some kind of loan, it's somebody's savings who's being put into that business. That's the prediction of the model. Every dollar that you save is invested by someone else, and every dollar you invest has been saved by somebody else.
Do we know how that like plays out in, the actual numbers?
How do you mean?
As in, like, is that true that like today in America?
Well, so one of the assumptions is of a closed economy, okay? That there is no foreign sector at all. When you introduce a foreign sector, foreign investors and things like that, it gets a little bit muddier because then you've got to think about money going into and out of the country. So no, it does not describe the literal situation in the United States today. But it does describe the world.
Right.
If you think of the world as one closed economy, because we don't trade with Mars or Jupiter or anything like that, every dollar saved in the world is a dollar that somebody else is going to invest somewhere in the world.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
It is, actually. It's miraculous, like you said.
So, to kind of hop off the beaten trail with banks and the market for loanable funds, one form of lending that I find really interesting is like micro lending to like very small loans to people in very impoverished places. I've seen a lot of data showing that this is like a really effective way to get people out of poverty. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that that's like true, backed up by the data? Do you think that these are good ways to help people in the world, or?
You're putting me on the spot.
I haven't seen the data.
I don't do research in this field. My understanding is the research is mixed. That in some cases it does lead to increases in small business formation in these impoverished places. Like in Bangladesh, it seems to work really well. There are other areas of the world, similarly poor areas, where it doesn't seem to work as well. So I guess one of the debates in the field, right, is how transferable is this from one country to another. So for whatever reason, it seems to work really well in Bangladesh. There's just less evidence that it works really well in, say, Pakistan or Honduras or any other country. But the positive effects in Bangladesh are really amazing. Bangladesh has gone from being one of the very poorest countries in the world to still a poor country, but it's not at the bottom anymore. And some people do attribute this to this expansion of microfinance. The guy who who founded the original microfinance institution eventually won a Nobel Prize I think it was a Nobel Peace Prize for this reason.
Man, that's amazing. I actually did not know that. But yeah. So loans are going to be really important to the economy, right? And banks are going to be one of the main ways that loans are, given out in the economy. Certainly in the modern economy, for sure. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. We're probably about to put up another one about some basic personal finance. Be sure to come back and join us for that one. All right. Thanks, guys.